Hello and welcome. You are listening to The Day My Brain Broke, presented by me, Lucy Reddin, in partnership with the Encephalitis Society. We shall be sharing with you the lives and experiences of those affected by encephalitis, a type of brain inflammation. So today we are joined by the wonderful Pauline. Pauline's up in Scotland and she co-hosts our volunteer group up there with Paul. So it really is the Paul and Pauline show. So Pauline, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good today. I've had a busy day at work, but yeah, everything's good today.
Excellent, excellent. I just want to say thank you so much for giving up your time to have a chat with us today and to share your story with all of our people out there listening to us and watching us. So let's kick it off, starting with, tell me about how life was before you were contracted encephalitis. What was your kind of normal day or week like?
So I had to think back when you sent me the list of questions. I had to think back. I was 46, so that's now I'm going to reveal my age. I was 7 years ago, and it was back in January 2015. I became unwell. So life just before that, or in the preceding time, was busy. Busy is my middle name, I think, to be honest. And I'm an ICU nurse, and I was an educator in ICU at the time, also involved in rehab in ICU. So my work, I didn't probably appreciate that my work was a huge part of my life, and until I became unwell, it really struck home how important and how big a part of my identity it was. So I worked day shift, I worked night shift, I worked long shifts. So that took up quite a lot of my time and had an impact on my day-to-day living. Aside from that, my downtime was involved with my husband, Alan. We don't have kids, so the two of us enjoy some luxury travel. We travelled. COVID and encephalitis has stalled my travelling, I should say. Initially it was encephalitis, and now that's COVID. But we enjoyed long haul travel. We travelled all over the world. We've been to Australia, we've been to Africa, we've been to Asia, we've been west to America to family. I had always had a new holiday up my sleeve and was always planning things. Also travelling in Scotland and nice weekend breaks and things like that. So that was a big part of my life. I'd done a bit of exercise, and before I was unwell, I had planned, and I had done a 10K. My husband's he was an athlete and was very into fitness and coaches, so I decided I was going to just try and do a wee bit more exercise as I was getting to a lady of a certain age.
Just gentle jogging to start off with, yeah. I appreciate that. But then really it sounds like a very active and very full-on, life. That was what was happening, so I suppose when it then, in the run-up to becoming ill, encephalitis presents itself sometimes very quickly in a few days or a few weeks, or in other times it can present itself in a few months. How was it with you? What was the onset like, or the run-up, shall we say, to becoming ill? Do you remember?
I do. I was always conscious throughout my whole journey. I've never lost consciousness, even though I was having seizures at one point. It's difficult to I can pinpoint one particular day, but that wasn't the start of it. When we look back and we think about it, there were a few things that we could actually identify, particularly with work and me becoming a bit anxious and feeling unsettled. My work department had moved out of the place we were used to working in, it was getting renovated. We'd moved to a different part of the hospital. It was less than ideal. I wasn't comfortable being there. I didn't think it was the best place for us to be. And that, when I think back, wasn't like my character. And then we moved back, and I found that actually quite disorientating.
Okay.
And when you think back to that, that was probably encephalitis starting on me. But I didn't realise that at the time, because I didn't know, obviously, I had it. But I can pinpoint a day when I first knew there was something not right with me, and it was the 4th of January 2015.
Yeah.
I remember exactly what happened, because I went to answer the telephone. It was a landline back then at that point.
Yeah.
And I felt palpitations. And I had been out a jog. I had my jogging clothes on, and I thought, oh, and these palpitations were strong. I'd never had palpitations in my life before. I thought, oh, and then it went away very quickly. And over the course of the next few days, it came back and it got worse. I thought it was a menopause, actually, because I was in my mid-40s and I'd had a few other symptoms, and I thought, well, this is the menopause kicking in.
Yeah.
Here we go. You know, and then I started to feel dizzy, and I just had this sort of strange kind of feeling of impending doom, and things weren't right. I started to have deja vu feelings, which I'd never experienced. And there were certain points that I was still driving at this point, because I didn't know that there was anything really unwell with me. There was a few different points on my journey to work that made me have the deja vu feelings. And when I arrived at work into the car park, there was a couple of strong feelings, and which I thought was odd. But again, you couldn't add it all up together until one day at work, I just lost track of time. And it was a night shift, and I just thought, I don't feel quite right, but I don't know what's wrong with me. And in intensive care, everything's based on the hour, every hour. So you do your observations on the hour, and you do whatever you need. And then the next hour will come along, and you start charting all the observations and everything. But my hours were just merging into one. And my colleagues were saying that they were like, you were just quite vague and staring into space. And I just didn't feel well. And we got one of my colleagues to check me out, and they wouldn't let me drive home that morning.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Which was good. And I never drove again for over 2 years after that, because I just didn't feel safe to drive. I electively chose not to drive even before I knew what was wrong with me.
This process, how long would you say? Was this taking weeks, or was this months that this, was going on for?
It's interesting, because it felt like a long time to me. And I knew that I wasn't feeling well, but people were saying I was stressed, because we did have a busy life. Work was a bit disrupted, and they said, oh, I think you're stressed. And yeah, I was stressed, there's no doubt about it, but I was stressed because I was unwell, and I knew there was something wrong, and I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I knew there was something wrong with me. Because I knew my own body, and I've never really had any illnesses or any ill health in it, not many things, and certainly no illnesses related around anxiety or depression or anything like that. But the dizziness got worse, the palpitations got worse, the funny feelings got worse, and then I started this rising, horrible, impending doom feeling, and they got worse. And then I started a tingling down my arm and up into my face. And actually, my husband, I would say to him, he would look at me and he'll say, are you having one? And we called them my funny feelings. Are you having a funny feeling? And I said, yes. And he said, I can see it going up your face. And it was like my face was all blotchy.
Wow.
And they got worse. And I got to the stage, I was actually scared to leave the house on my own. And I was quite paranoid. And I was always saying to him, have you locked the front door? where we live in Ayrshire in Scotland, during the day I don't lock my front door. That's just how it is. I know not everybody lives like me, but like at the moment my front door's not locked. But I got paranoid about that, and that was just out of character for me. And I kept saying, is the front door locked? Are we safe? And then there was something on the television, and I got a bit paranoid about that. And then I got emotional about things that wouldn't normally make me emotional. And obviously this was my hippocampus being inflamed. And I think being a nurse, I kind of try and rationalise all these things in my mind. I just knew there was something seriously wrong with me, but I couldn't get anybody to you know, work out what it was. So
Pauline, so the day that your brain broke, let's say, the day you ended up in hospital, do you remember much what happened or what's been back to you?
So it was a few weeks of battling this, you know, getting somebody to look at me. And actually I had one of my colleagues asked her husband, who also worked in the hospital, and he said no, because he knew my character, and he got me a scan. And I was lucky, I was fortunate, I got a cancellation because I live close to the hospital, and they asked me if I could be there within an hour. And I was very fortunate that my parents drove me because I wasn't driving at that point, and I got that scan. And from that day on, I didn't look back. And then it was all systems go, because the next day they reported the scan and they said, oh, there's something really wrong. And I, you know, with Pauline, we need to get her in. And it was like all systems go. I was asked to bring myself to hospital. I was admitted to my local hospital where I work initially.
Wow.
And
your colleagues were there seeing you and having to treat you.
Well, I because I work in intensive care, we're in a small corner of the hospital. I didn't really know the staff in the other part of the hospital. So I knew a couple of the doctors, but I didn't really know a lot of the staff. They treated me initially for viral encephalitis, herpes simplex. And went along the lines of that to start with. And then I was really, there's quite a lot of luck involved. One was getting the scan at short notice, and the second was a neurologist. So I live and work in a district general hospital, so I'm not in a city centre. A neurologist had come down from Glasgow to see another patient in the ward. And the doctor in the ward asked him to look at me because I wasn't presenting quite
just quite right.
People do with viral. So he came and he went, oh no, there's something not right here. I think, and he looked at my scan and he said, I think we need to take this lady up to Glasgow to the neurological centre.
Right, okay.
So I was transferred up that day to Glasgow.
So was you then later down the line diagnosed with a different type of encephalitis?
Yes, so I was in hospital for 4 weeks, which is quite a long period of time in this day and age, where I had every test under the sun, I think. I had more MRI scans, I had CT scans, I had lumbar punctures, I had blood tests for everything that you could name, and they still weren't sure exactly why this part of my brain was really swollen. At one point, that's one of the things I was going to chat to you further on, was that they thought that actually I had a brain tumour, you know, and they were going along those lines, but they weren't sure. But I was a month in hospital and I was home on pass when I actually got my diagnosis, which was autoimmune limbic encephalitis with the LGI1 antibody.
Now that's a pretty rare form, isn't it?
It's the commoner one of the autoimmune.
Oh, it is? Okay.
One of two, the NMDAR and the LGI1, are more common, but it's uncommon in me from the point of view, it tends to be men and slightly older men. So I'm not your, of LGI1, I'm not your stereotypical patient to get that. I just like to be different. That's what my friends say anyway. You couldn't get something wrong with you that was kind of normal and running out. You had to go and
do
get
something special. Yeah, absolutely.
You had to go and get something a wee bit different, didn't you?
Of course.
And then you had to go and get it again as well.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, yeah. Tell us about this then. So the second time around.
So I got over all of that eventually. And life went back to normal.
Yeah.
Oh, a new life, a new normal. We talk about the new normal. We even went on holiday. And then I got this newfound brave kind of feelings that I could talk about my experience, and I was able to stand up and speak, and I had a confidence that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
And I was at a conference and I was actually talking about my work and also doing a little bit of networking about encephalitis at that point, and I felt the funny feelings. I was about to go and speak actually to all these critical care nurses in London, and that feeling rose up through me again, and I just knew what was coming, and the feelings came back, and I just couldn't believe it, because statistically I'd looked at the research, and to get it was very rare. Yes, it did come back, but that was rare too. But there was a possibility, and I had convinced myself it wasn't coming back, because it was 2 years since I'd first had it. So, and I was trying to move on with my life. But it came back. But because I knew what to expect the second time, and I had made a good recovery the first time, I knew exactly what to do. I actually, because I was in London, I didn't want to just present to hospital. I knew that I could get home, and it was a train journey. And the next day, I still had touch with my neurologist, so I'm quite lucky that way. And I just phoned Glasgow, and they said, "Let's get you a blood test. Let's get you up here." And the turnaround time from the first, so in the space of 2.5 years, the test was now available in Glasgow, and the turnaround was so much quicker. Whereas the first time my blood sample and my lumbar puncture sample went to Oxford, and it took 4 weeks. This time, the second time in that space of time, Glasgow were doing a test, and it was 24 hours, and the doctor knew when he did the test that he was pretty sure that I had it, and he came back to me the next day and said, yeah.
Wow.
But he'd already started my steroid treatment, because he was so convinced that
it was already,
And then it was back to going through all that again.
Wow. I mean, it was the same type that returned again. It was the autoimmune. And I think, is it with the autoimmune type of encephalitis that you're more prone, if at all, in it returning? It returns back, I think, if it's more, you've got the autoimmune. Is that right?
It can be, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the blessing is that you recognize it the second time around, and things are happening now much more quickly. The turnaround is happening, being able to identify it, knowing your prior history, all that type of thing. It's just, at least it's all going in the right direction with regards to the care that we now receive. So,
well, I was a month ahead from the first time with my steroid treatment. So I had waited my diagnosis. And then, so this time, the second time, I was straight on the treatment. I had the steroids, immunoglobulin, straight off.
Yeah.
And there was no waiting, so my recovery was quicker because we didn't have to do all that workup before.
Yeah.
I also received a drug called rituximab about 6 months after that, which resets your immune system.
Right, I was just about to ask what that did. Yeah.
And fingers crossed, from 2017, I'm still sitting here not telling you I've had it again. So
yes,
I can only hope, because some people have the rituximab infusions regularly. So they do, because the antibodies aren't dampened.
Yeah,
but I'm very lucky, and mine's got dampened with it, and it's not come back. So.
Excellent. So then, from the time that you was in hospital, you know, like the day that your brain broke, so to speak, and you ended up in hospital, and the diagnosis was then given both times, how did your like friends and family react to all of this?
I think I was in hospital for a lot of that time, and I got visitors, and I didn't get, because I was in Glasgow, I wasn't in a local hospital.
Yeah,
you know, I didn't have a lot of visitors, because I found that it was too much for my head, you know, too many people and noise. I didn't cope very well. So we kind of really just kept it to my husband and my parents most of the time. And I remember 3 of my friends came up one night to give my family a rest, and see the chatter, it was just too much for me. And I'd had one of the treatments, and you can get really bad headaches with the immunoglobulin therapy, and my head was bouncing, and I was just like, I cannot be bothered with this. I also actually asked one of my relatives not to visit one day again, just because I was just like, I just can't cope with conversation, and it was really hard. And I think they probably found that quite difficult, because I'm a social person, and I'm not,
and that's not how they've seen you before. So it's like this was a new, different you. It's kind of like, we don't recognise this, Pauline. It's like it takes a bit of a while to adjust, doesn't it? So it's like,
and steroids changed my personality too.
Did they?
Yeah.
In what way?
I was a bit hyper.
Okay.
I'd high dose steroids for a year, and I blew up like a balloon. I didn't sleep very well. I had quite bad insomnia because of it, and I was a bit hyper, and I could talk 100 miles an hour, and sometimes things just came out that I didn't really mean to come out, because I'm quite good. I'm quite a measured person, and I can hide a lot of what I'm thinking in my head, and I can be quite subtle in what I need to say. But with this, everything just came out.
I think it's what I was talking to one of our volunteers in another video, Bev, and we were saying that it's about, you're so much more in touch with your emotions. So it's kind of like, you know, when you're really happy, you're like extra happy. And if you're sad, you know, you really do feel very, very sad. And it's just that extreme of emotions, whichever one. So even if you're laughing at something, you're like almost laughing hysterically at it. It's that high of each different type of emotion. So for us,
I can relate.
I don't know, it sounds like it's did the same with you, where it just heightens the senses in some instances. And it is, I understand when you say about wanting to not have to talk to people, or can't deal with more than 2 or 3 people. So I think that's why I'm liking this type of format, because it is just, you know, one-on-one, and it's a lot easier to just focus and concentrate, but also there's not too much other sound going on, which is, you know, a distraction, I think. So just trying to think what the next question was that I had down here. Yeah, it was all about kind of navigating the new you. So because we've now changed, because certain things, I don't know, you know, how were you affected? What challenges did you find that you had once you came out of hospital?
So I think probably emotionally, you know, that being a bit high that we were talking about, and then also getting really upset, and you know, I could cry a bit at times, you know, it was up or down, and you know, there was a bit of that going on. Adjusting to life without being able to drive, and I didn't really appreciate how important driving was, and how you took it for granted until I couldn't drive, because even though I didn't lose consciousness, those feelings I had were seizures, so I wasn't allowed to drive.
Yeah.
I had been put on anti-epileptic medicine as well, and quite strong doses of them, and I found that difficult. I went from somebody who never took any medicine to having a cabinet full of what felt like full of medicine, and being dictated by having to take it at certain times of day. I had been off work for a while. I was trying to get back to work, but because my immune system was completely dampened and working in intensive care, there was a risk to my own health.
Yeah.
So my job changed for a while. I was very fortunate, and I was very lucky. My boss, he was great, and I was allowed to work in the office and do office-based work for quite a while. I helped him with stuff, and I also did some education stuff.
Great.
And I'm lucky that I was able to do that, because
Yeah.
I found when I wasn't at work, I had lost a bit of my identity, because when we were chatting at the beginning, I didn't appreciate really how important my job was until, you know, at one point I wasn't sure I would get back to work, because cognitively, I didn't know if I would be able to remember my job.
Yeah, no, I understand.
There was definite cognitive impairment, and I was also very fortunate. I keep using this word, fortunate. But I was referred to a psychologist within my hospital, who actually was a neuropsychologist, which is quite unusual for a district general hospital. And she was amazing. She was great. And I built up quite a good relationship with her, and I ended up actually working with her on a different project once I was well. She joined a project that I was then tasked with doing, which was great. But she put me through some different cognitive assessments and tests, and worked with me on improving my memory. So although I could remember how to do my job, there were things when she did tests with me, I didn't appreciate that I couldn't recall certain things. You know, so we did different things like that, and that was challenging within itself. Sure. You know, trying to focus and find a different way to work for my brain to remember things.
Exactly, yeah. And it takes effort, doesn't it, for the brain to actually do that? So when you're trying to, you know, get a brain to almost rewire itself, I guess, it takes a lot of energy. Yeah.
And the part of my hippocampus being quite badly swollen, obviously it shrinks back down when the steroids shrink it.
Right.
You know, that's the part of your brain that's affected. So it was more a short-term memory than long-term memory. But I was a list. I wrote down lists anyway, so that was quite good from my point of view. It's something I did before.
Right. Yeah.
And I've continued to do, and even to today, you know, I've got a list. In fact, I've got several lists. For different things.
I've had to become the queen of lists as well. It wasn't something in my nature beforehand.
Right.
But now it's like, oh yes, most definitely. Yeah, do love a list.
Me too.
but they are, it's the way it's just systematic, and it's because it's the simple kind of like, you know, it's that part of the brain just finds that functionality really difficult to achieve, but it doesn't mean that, you know, you can't get there in other ways. And I think once we realize that, you feel less, you know, aggrieved and upset, I hope, you know, about the actual situation itself, because it is difficult to try and, you know, accept the new you, the new Pauline, when you realize, oh, you know, some things are really incredibly difficult to the point where, you know, we just can't do it anymore. We have to retrain to do it. So, I mean, how did you, you know, how have you coped? Are you coping? Have you been coping with it? Or, you know, that...
I mean, yes, definitely. I mean, I was able to go back to my old job.
Yeah.
And probably one of the most significant things was my boss at that time. He had faith in me. And that was a huge thing for me, because, you know, you worry that you can't get back to where you were before, that you're not capable of doing what you did before. And within my department, I had quite a senior role, so that worried me. And he asked me to lead a project for ICU rehab, which to this day, that's what I've been doing today. We became involved with a project, we ran with it, and he allowed me to be, he really would have liked to have done it himself, but because he was the big boss, he didn't have time to do it, and he let me do that, and that gave me a confidence in my own ability
to undertake.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a team of people, but you know, he allowed me to kind of go with that, and
take charge.
Ran with it. And I think I felt that having been unwell myself and spent a month in hospital, I was in actually a better position to understand what my patients had been through.
True.
Because I'd experienced insomnia, fatigue, you know, body image change, emotional changes, anxiety. So I learned a lot myself that I could then help other people, because I think when you've also had that experience, you're in a better position to support other people. So that was really good.
Most
that I allowed to do that.
And don't you find that, is that part of the reason, you know, to join the Encephalitis Society, to then become a volunteer and to do, you know, all of the wonderful things that we all do together? And now, thankfully, you know, with COVID restrictions easing, we can hopefully do more meetups throughout the year again now. So yeah, how do you feel about all of that?
I didn't phone the support line, and I didn't chat to John in the beginning. I used the Encephalitis Society website for information, clinical information, because of my work. I was used to researching conditions, and so I wanted a trusted website that had the information, because I mean, you know, back then in 2015, I mean, it is only 7 years ago, but the research has become huge in comparison to what there was then. It's developed a lot in that time, and back then there wasn't a huge amount of research. Dr. Irani and the team at Oxford particularly have done an amazing amount of work in that area, in that short space of time. So I wanted to know more about, was I more likely to get it again? You know, what was the likely recovery and such like. So that was what I'd gone to the website for initially, and then seen all this of information, and it was amazing, because there was so little information, and it's even developed hugely in the 7 years since.
Absolutely.
The support network and everything. So that was kind of how I started using it. I didn't, as I say, I didn't phone the helpline, but I knew it was there and it was available to me. but that wasn't the kind of help I personally needed at the time.
Sure, yeah.
But
But
as
then that's
time
the
went
beauty
on,
of it, isn't it? It's like you can use it at different times or for
yeah,
different reasons. There's the support networking, but then there's
yeah,
also, like you say, all of the amazing research. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So just as time went on, and I was dipping in and out, and I wanted to raise awareness predominantly
yeah,
because I knew about, obviously, in my role, I'd actually looked after a young lady not that long before I had encephalitis myself, but she had viral encephalitis, so
okay,
it was
right,
different, and
yeah,
I didn't actually know the help that was out there that I could have signposted her
mm,
family to.
yeah, yeah,
And I thought, if I don't know that, how does it other people know that? And that's what I wanted to do, was to raise awareness. So I went in it that way
brilliant, yeah,
more, and I
yeah,
wanted to help raise awareness. And I thought I was in a fortunate position of my work to
yeah.
try and work in that way. And that's how I got into it
Oh, so
initially.
how other, like, are there other ways you can like explain to us how you've created awareness?
So I've done videos, done a couple of videos. I've been on the Scottish News on World Encephalitis Day a couple of years ago.
Fantastic.
It's probably actually longer than that now, which
Yeah.
was exciting and scary at the same
Yeah,
time.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but it was really, really good.
Brilliant.
I've also done a couple of stands. Paul, my sidekick from the Scottish meeting, that's where I first met
Show
Paul.
everybody, don't forget.
We both went to a head injury awareness day. It's like a brain injury awareness day, and the Encephalitis Society wanted to have a stall to give out literature, leaflets, and chat. So Paul and I went and did that for a day.
Yeah,
We're doing that again this year. They're starting them up again this year.
brilliant,
So we're
brilliant.
doing that again this year. And also,
They're always really good fun as well, aren't they? Because people
yeah,
really do want to know the information. They're not shy in coming forwards, and it's always lovely to just chat to people, face to face for real, in a real environment, just giving out information, which they are very happy to receive. Because once they hear about it, they certainly are very grateful that they know of its existence, aren't they? So, yeah.
definitely. And the last thing I've done was, because I took unwell at a nurses' conference, a critical care nurses' conference, I asked them the next year if I could have a stand and I could do a talk about my own experience. So I went down to Bournemouth
Yeah.
and had a stand at the critical care nurses conference, and I also did a talk about my own experience and a wee bit of education around autoimmune encephalitis and the different antibodies there is now, and actually to get the nurses to signpost people to the Encephalitis Society.
Yeah.
And that went down really well. That was really good.
I bet it did, Pauline. That sounds amazing. Yeah. And it's just it's amazing what being a volunteer can take you to then go out and do. And it just really does make us feel really, I'm speaking for you, but I'm hoping that you agree. I speak for myself. It makes me feel incredibly proud. So I'm sure you must feel incredibly proud doing it as well. Because it's just, there's nothing better than just knowing that the information you're giving out to people is just so very necessary and that it's appreciated. And, and it's just about that wish and hope that many people, don't be diagnosed with something and then not know what it is, because it's still the fact we know so many people still don't know what encephalitis is. So like you say, the awareness is so important. It's just like, I want to try and get many people to know as possible. So well done.
Probably one of the most powerful experiences I had was actually at work. And we had a patient with encephalitis, and her daughter was coming to visit her and was quite obviously very worried about her mum's condition. Again, she didn't know much about it. She wasn't. The patient was actually a nurse, and her daughter wanted to know a bit more. And I actually said to her, "I've had it. and I will get you some information on it, and see the fact that I was actually standing well speaking to her afterwards.
Yeah.
And I've kept in touch with them. And I actually do work with this lady who had encephalitis herself.
Wow.
Now, because she went through our recovery rehab program, and now she volunteers for us in that sense.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant.
And the support that they got as a family has been great. So that meant the world to me, that I was actually able to give somebody hope.
And that's so powerful, because it's just for a disease, or condition that's, so rare or relatively rare, to then not only meet somebody, in the hospital, but just happens to work there as well and had it. It's just such an encouraging thing immediately to just see you like, okay, clearly we can become this well again. This is fantastic. That's, you just give them hope, and that's just amazing. So, yeah. But what are the odds, indeed? Wow. So then I'm just trying to think, the next question to ask you, I'm just looking down on my list here. So when you, times of getting, what am I trying to say here? When you're feeling kind of like a little bit down, is there any music that you would use to kind of, help you through the day? Is there a particular song, or is it a type of genre? Do you get up and dance? Because I find that music is a wonderful therapy, and I'm just always interested to know what else it helps, or how else it helps other people.
I thought that question was quite interesting, because for quite a considerable amount of time after my brain was broken, as we would say, I couldn't cope with reading or music. I found that both of them really hard. One with the loudness of the music, and the second, like, I couldn't concentrate to read.
Yeah.
But recently I actually have read 2 books in quick succession, which is quite new for me. I hadn't been doing that for quite a while. And it has taken me this long to get back into reading. But music, I started in COVID, started singing again in an online choir, which was actually really good, and I really enjoyed that. That was really good. And one of the songs that we sang was, and it is one of my favourite songs, was On a Day Like This from Elbow. One day like this from Elbow.
Yeah.
And the words on that song are "Throw those curtains wide. One day like this, we'll see you right for life." I'm not going to sing it because I'm not a singer. I like singing, but not in public.
Oh, okay, no problem. That's all right. On the replay, I'll go back and have a listen to it.
When we did our online choir, you're on mute.
I suppose. Do you know, I did something similar in the lockdown as well, and I did a couple of choir Zoom lessons, and it was so much fun. It was really bizarre because you sound so loud because it's just you in your own space, because you're not there with the other singers, but then you're still all together on the screen. So, and it still sounded, it was music singing together. That's always good fun, isn't it? So, yeah.
I picked another song because I don't just like to give you one. And the other song, actually did a radio interview for World Encephalitis Day a few years ago. And the presenter, she knew, there was a chap from the Bay City Rollers that had encephalitis, and she was a friend of his. She wanted to do an awareness session. And she asked me what song I wanted at the end. And that was The Whole of the Moon by the Waterboys. And that's my other favourite. That's my other favourite song that I can turn right up and I can belt out.
That one I recognise. I didn't before the first one, I'll be honest. But no, that Waterboys one, I do actually like that. That is nice. Oh, so music plays a good part for you. Yeah, it's fair to say, isn't it?
Yes, I do like to sing. And I was in the hospital choir, but that's obviously not happening at the moment.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes you
You know,
feel good.
you're a really social person, aren't you?
I do try.
You can see that. No, it's nice. Yeah, yeah. So what would you say in that case to somebody if they were to come to you and say, either them themselves or a member of their family had been recently diagnosed with encephalitis? Have you got any kind of like words of encouragement? Because, whenever we talk about it, it is a bit of a deep subject that we do, talk about things that aren't always, pleasant, but to try and give some light to the shades, what would you say?
I think to keep hope and keep your spirits up, try and look forward. And there is, everybody's recovery is different. I've been very lucky. I didn't know how lucky I was going to be, but having motivation and positivity definitely, I think, helped me. And good family support and friends around me definitely helped, and work colleagues too, in making a good recovery, and using the Encephalitis Society
Yeah,
as you need to, without a doubt. The in the last 2 years, the Zoom meetings have been great. I haven't latterly joined in because work's been quite busy. Working in ICU during COVID was quite tough, but
yeah,
the online Zoom meetings are great.
they really are. Yeah,
I would certainly sell them if anybody's struggling to come in. You'll get great support and use that as need be. And that was why I was quite keen to set up a Scotland group as well.
yeah.
This a regional group to get that support where people, if people need it.
Yeah,
Was definitely
so again, yeah, you
positive.
you head up that with Paul, the Paul and the Pauline show up in Scotland. So anybody that needs support up there, then yeah, to get in contact. And like you say, yeah, I think these monthly Zoom groups have been working really, really well. And it just kind of shows, because we get people from overseas as well, don't we? In different time zones. So it's not like it's just in the UK here. So we really are global as well. So because it doesn't discriminate, So yeah, yeah. No, that's really good. And I think to just hear you speak so honestly, a lot of what you said, today has just been, I've just been sitting here just like, wow, just trying to take it all in and just be like, I can't imagine some of what you've had to endure. To have to go through encephalitis twice is just something that you should just be so proud of, to have, come through and be here talking with us today and telling us about your experiences. And then just, yeah, being able to go back to work and still be, being able to work in such a demanding environment, I think is a real good testament to yourself as well. So that gives me encouragement, because a lot of the time I do find, especially when you suffer with fatigue a lot, and it can be quite difficult to get out of the mindset, because it's not just a physical fatigue, it's a mental fatigue as well, isn't it? And I think, to have you there in this example, to just be like, things are tough, but you can still, get at it and work hard. So thank you. Just from what you said today, it's helped me, if no one else. So job done.
It's interesting because I don't see it like that.
Do you
That's not
not?
how.
No.
No, I just
Oh,
see that I didn't really have an option. To me, I just had to get on and get better. And, to me, there wasn't an alternative. I wasn't going to sit down to it and wallow in self-pity. That just wasn't an option. It was all about, getting back to being the best I could be. And whether that was to how I was before, or it's a slightly different, the psychologist and I talked about the new normal, and we talk about that in my work now as well with patients. And I've had that conversation about you know, how you adjust your life to a new way that works for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And how that's actually really important. I just do what I need to do, and just go there. And if it does give somebody encouragement, and that's just wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
But that's not how I see it.
But then that just shows, you know, the pure intention right there. You know, it's not for the fame or the glory side of it. You just get that as an add-on, Pauline, afterwards. That's all. So yeah, no, thank you. So we're just wrapping up at the end of our chat now. I can't believe it's come through so quickly already. But was there anything that you'd like to say just to kind of finish up, you know, something I've not asked, or something you just would like to say just to end?
Oh, I could talk for Scotland all day about this. I get quite excited, but you've not got all day. No, I think what you're doing is great. This is the first time I've done a podcast. So I've done lots of media, different things, but I've not done a podcast. And I was telling, so I do the ICU support group, and I was telling them last night that I was doing this tonight because we were talking about doing something about patient experience for them.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, I've got a bit of that, and I'm doing a podcast tomorrow night. I think what you're doing is great, and I think just any awareness that we can raise is amazing. And I just love World Encephalitis Day. I think it's so important. I always have a day off that day because you know, sometimes last minute I get asked to do an interview or whatever, and I don't like to say no. I like to be available. I'm sorry I've not got my t-shirt on today, and normally I've got an array of t-shirts. I've got about 4 or 5, and unfortunately I wasn't organised enough to wear my t-shirt today. But I think raising awareness and support are the two main things that are the most important around the condition that we've all experienced. And yeah.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for helping spread the awareness with, you know, talks like this, because it's just a really powerful way, I think, to just share our experiences for people that may want to just know more about encephalitis, or they've just been told a friend or a family member has encephalitis, and they're just doing a little search online and they come across, you know, these little talks. So anything that we can do to help, obviously, is just, you know, something that we all enjoy doing. Like you say, it's not for the, you know, anything else, but just for the absolute desire and needs to get the word out there, because people still don't know what encephalitis is. So we're here to help spread that word. So thank you ever so much for your time, Pauline. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care. Bye.
You're welcome. Thanks.
You have been listening to The Day My Brain Broke. If you would like further information about the Encephalitis Society, their website is encephalitis.info. That's encephalitis.info. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Also, if you have been or know of someone else who has been affected by encephalitis and you would like to share your story, please do get in contact with us, as we would love to hear from you. You can email me at lucy.teamencephalitis@gmail.com. And finally, if you're also inclined to see more of what I have to offer, then please do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ladybird Wellness. You can also find Ladybird Wellness on Facebook and Instagram.